Since time immemorial, the lands of the Navajo Nation have harbored secrets. Stories of strange visitors and shape-shifting witches, passed down through generations, drift through the sagebrush and towering sandstone, and beneath an endless sky. And some nights, canyons whisper a dark magic. Evil in a single word, yenaldooshi. This is a land of haunting beauty and a cradle for the supernatural. Join us on this episode of Belief Hole as we explore true encounters with the unknown, as told by the Navajo Ranger who dedicated his life to uncovering the truth behind them. Stanley Milford Jr., the Paranormal Ranger.
Conspiracy,
synchronicity,
Sasquatch,
homunculus,
alien races,
Satanism in Hollywood, MK Ultra, Tartaria.
There's like a whole, I've been watching this one guy that...
Close the door, Ed!
Jeremy, close your door!
What's the,
Inner Earth Disagreements.
Ghost Dad!
I like that movie.
Dogman.
Bohemian Grove.
Feldman.
Magicians are demons.
Specters and
Spirit summonings.
paralysis.
Strange disappearances.
Sky whale phenomenon.
Alternative history.
Shadow people.
Shh, quiet, I'm trying to say words with the mouth.
It's getting dicey out there. Poltergeists.
That's cool.
Anunnaki. What is the moon? Elf towers.
I would never talk about it. That's old.
Y2K. Cover-ups. Apocalyptic catastrophe. Vampire.
Well, hello.
Well, hello.
Hi,
I'm Jeremy,
I'm John.
I'm Chris.
and we are the Brothers of the Belief Hole.
Yes.
I'm super excited, guys.
It's a pretty creepy one from the stories that I was reading.
Oh, yeah. We're going to a very special place, guys, with the assistance of Stanley Milford Jr., the Paranormal Ranger. Now, we received a book from Stanley and his people, and let me tell you, this book is fascinating, enthralling, it's beautifully written, but the stories in here are pretty incredible, and it's right along the lines of what we cover. And it's a kind of a glimpse into maybe some of the less spoken about, where there are more perhaps whispers of some of the phenomena in our country, or in the Navajo Nation, to be specific. And you guys, you probably know what I'm talking about here as we come up to these stories, but I think a familiar concept to listeners of our show will be the Skinwalker. And I'm kind of jumping the gun here.
Yeah, you are.
Sorry.
Back it up.
Let's back it up a little bit. Let's talk about this book right here in my hands. It will be superimposed.
We have the book somewhere, and I could not find
I have
it.
a physical copy, but
Yeah, we have video finally to show a book that we're recording, and it's somewhere in the house, but not sure where.
But this book is called The Paranormal Ranger by Stanley Milford Jr. Now, it's coming from the perspective of Stanley Milford, who was a law enforcement officer, a Navajo Ranger, working in the Navajo reservation, the Navajo Nation, for over 20 years. And it's going to sound a lot to you guys like, kind of like the Navajo X-Files. Because at some point in his career, and we'll kind of get to this, but Stanley and his good friend and partner, John Dover, they're approached to head what is called the SPU, or the Navajo Rangers Special Projects Unit. And this unit would go on to explore cases that were on the fringes, you could say, that didn't maybe have an explanation, that didn't fit within the normal confines or parameters of law enforcement.
Paranormal events, right? Supernatural incidents.
Supernatural, paranormal, things that were really affecting people in the Navajo Nation, but weren't getting the attention that they deserved.
It was interesting, and not to interrupt your flow, but
Yeah, go ahead.
I remember reading that he and his partner were kind of brought up in two different worlds because they were raised in Western culture. I think one in LA and one in Oklahoma, somewhere in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
But they also were raised with their Navajo roots.
Yeah.
Very close to that. So they learned the traditions, but they weren't as locked into the superstitions, quote unquote. They weren't concerned about some of the things that they considered to be more tradition and not reality in the lore. So this is why they were sort of tapped, as you said, we'll get to later. But a lot of people, when they would have these experiences, would be kind of ignored on the reservation because oftentimes, not because the officers didn't believe, but that they didn't want to get involved because they believed.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to get anywhere near the ideas of spirits of the dead, or obviously skinwalkers, things like that.
Yeah, the other Navajo Rangers were brought up more specifically in the beliefs of the Navajo. And to put it bluntly, they believed more. And the author, Stanley, and his partner and friend, John Dover, who would go on to lead this task force, they were very much Western kids growing up. Like, I think John Dover, his father starred opposite Jimmy Stewart as like a child actor. So he grew up in LA. And, you know, our author, Stanley, he grew up a lot of the time in rural Oklahoma among Anglo-Americans, but would also spend his summers on the reservation. So having those beliefs somewhat divorced from their regular understanding of reality, replaced with, I guess, science and reason of the Western world, that kind of was their predominant thought process.
Skepticism.
Yeah, so the skepticism would be like, you know, if we hear stories, we'll be skeptical, just like they would be. They wouldn't fully believe. But they were open-minded, and that's kind of put them in the perfect position to lead this team, the SPU, because they would remain skeptical. They did have the courage to go into these places, especially with some of the experiences that we'll hear Stanley experienced even as a kid and then as a young adult before joining the Rangers, enough to make him concerned that there was a reality to it, but still having that kind of skeptical upbringing. So,
well, why don't you take us into this enchanted area, Joe? This is the Four Corners area, right? The Navajo Reservation. I think it's actually about the size of West Virginia. And it goes, it kind of corners out, what is it, Colorado, Utah, New Mexico?
Arizona, New Mexico,
Yeah.
Utah, and Colorado. Yeah, this is a beautiful area. I mean, it's magical, mysterious. The Navajo Nation, it's the largest reservation actually in the United States, Chris. And as you said, it is often cited as being about the size of West Virginia, 27,000 square miles across Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and Colorado.
Vast.
A vast place, a land of mysterious beauty, and also riddled with tales of the yenaldooshi. And I wanted to say that because it rhymes, but it's true. You guys might remember we've talked about...
Did that rhyme?
Yeah, what rhymed?
A land of mysterious beauty, riddled with tales of the yenaldooshi.
Nice.
Right?
I thought it was the Yanagoshi.
Well, actually, you guys remember Kaylee?
Yeah, that's the story I'm referencing.
She spelled it yenaldooshi with two O's.
That's kind of what I remember her saying, Yanagoshi.
Yeah, I remember both ways, so I think we're both
Oh,
right.
you know what? She spelled it Gushi, and then she said, but pronounced yenaldooshi.
Ah, Jeremy's wrong.
Oh, so the misspelling was after.
Did you say
him.
Jeremy's right?
I said wrong.
Oh, good, because he is wrong.
I thought it was Yenaldooshi, but she wrote Yenaldooshi, and then she said misspelled, obviously, but she was talking
Every
about...
time you say Yanaguchi, I think of Christy Yanaguchi.
Who?
Or what's her name? Christy Yanaguchi. The figure skater that got her knee nicked.
Yenaldooshi?
Her knee whacked by Tanya Harding.
Well, she wasn't skinwalking anywhere after that round.
Christina Yanaguchi.
It's a bad joke. Nobody got it.
Yamaguchi. Oh, no, that's not her.
I was going to say that doesn't sound
Christy
right.
Yamaguchi was an American figure skater, but it wasn't. Who is the Tanya Harding and
It was Tanya Harding and
Nancy Kerrigan?
Nancy Kerrigan. That's, yeah.
Okay, yep. Let's get back to the fun stuff.
Yenaldooshi.
Yes, Yanagoshi.
Yes.
All right, we're all in agreement. This yenaldooshi, this is sort of the first experience that really wakes up our author, Stan, to the possible realities of the traditions. He has a pretty terrifying experience in this area on the Navajo reservation late one night, I believe.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I kind of mentioned it. That's kind of the Kickstarter for his experience, but mentioning that in the context of this vast place, the Navajo Nation, the reservation, to put it in perspective for us guys, since we're Ohioans, it'd be like taking the population of Akron and then putting that in West Virginia, the entire state.
Oh, yeah. So people are super spread out.
Yeah, so it's very remote.
Yeah. I remember reading that as well in the book, that they have, as a Navajo Ranger, if you call them and you need help, something's happening on your land, I think usually it takes about an hour to reach you.
Depending on where you are.
Because everybody is so spread out and they're so understaffed, they have to travel this vast distance to get to these spread out places. They knew that they had to fend for themselves in a lot of situations. So people are very, they're hardy folk.
Yeah.
They know how to handle themselves if they need to.
Right.
They don't mess around.
Yeah.
F around, find out. That's what they say.
So that kind of gives you an idea of kind of the remoteness of this.
Which equals terrifying.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, imagine being out on the roads in such a remote place. And as we talked about the Yenaldooshi, the Skinwalker, I feel like most encounters are roadside. And part of that could be because of the remoteness, because if you're going to get chased by something like that,
Yeah.
it's going to happen on the road in between long distances.
Otherwise, they're just wandering out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
They see the lights in the car and they just run to you.
You're a target.
Like a moth to a flame.
Yeah. I wonder if that's something to do with turning into a dog-like animal, that you have some of those desires.
They chase cars.
Chase the cars. Probably just to instill that fear, because that is terrifying. That is kind of, I guess, your prey on the road.
So they don't show up on people's property?
Oh, yeah, they do. Remember we covered that story from Kaylee with her mom, where it was during that peyote ceremony?
Yeah.
So, yeah, not always roadside, but with this kind of remote landscape, it seems like a natural place
Yeah.
to encounter. Anyways, that's coming up.
Plus, they don't have any protection out there, really.
Oh, yeah, when you're on the road. I mean, you need a shaman with a bone whistle or something.
Yeah.
I like how Stanley described the remoteness of this. He said, the landscape is, quote, incredibly beautiful and seemingly infinite. And it really is, if you've been there.
Yeah.
An interesting note he said also was that on his patrols, he's stood where no other person has ever stood before. So that kind of gives you that idea of how much space there is. This kind of undiscovered country.
We've been through there before.
Oh, man, it's crazy. This is like straight out of like a John Wayne movie.
Yeah, John, when we drove out together,
It's awesome.
we were going to Colorado. I believe we drove through on the outskirts of this area, right? Because we went through Roswell. Remember that trip?
Oh, yeah.
We're going to Sedona. Remember that kind of incredible landscape. That's kind of that Four Corners area going through there.
Yeah.
Very enchanting.
Oh, totally. It makes me want to go there right now.
I know. Let's go.
We'll go in our imaginations.
We'll take the audience.
If anything like Skinwalkers is going to happen, it's going to happen there.
That's right. And just such an encounter did happen to our author. Okay, so, Stanley grew up with his mother, who was Cherokee, and his father was full-blood Navajo. And his mother would tell him stories. Stories like the shapeshifter and the owl, which is kind of that familiar tale you guys might have heard, where there's, in this case, an owl, a freaky owl that someone shoots, because owls are also, in Navajo culture, traditionally are seen as connected to witches and witchcraft.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the fear around this owl, the owl was shot in the story, and then in the place of the owl was the body of a man who had been shot. So this is like your typical shapeshifter witchcraft story. And, he didn't believe necessarily these stories. He didn't discount them, the stories his mother and his aunts would tell, but, he didn't fully believe them. That is until one day in 1986, when Stanley would have his own encounter with the yenaldooshi, or Skinwalker. This is the Skinwalker Chase.
It was 1986, and I was 20 years old, spending the summer with my dad in Fort Defiance on the Navajo Reservation. That July night, I had gone to the theater to see Maximum Overdrive, a horror-based movie on a Stephen King novel. The soundtrack was all AC/DC, which is what had drawn me. I was a huge rock and heavy metal fan and had been playing guitar for most of my life. The movie let out around midnight. When I walked into the lobby to dump my empty popcorn and soda containers into the trash, my eye caught on an elderly Navajo man sitting on a bench against the wall. He asked me if I was by any chance heading to Fort Defiance and could give him a ride. He was probably in his mid-80s, and I was surprised to see him out so late and at a Stephen King horror movie of all places, but I quickly agreed to drive him home. We didn't talk much on the drive because the old man mostly spoke Navajo. He seemed friendly and normal, but strangely, he asked to be let out on the side of the road at the base of the hill that goes to Sawmill, Arizona, nowhere near any house that I could see. It was pitch black out, and if there was a moon that night, I don't remember it. Hey, you be careful out there, okay? Have a good night. I left the old man in the dark, and then turned the car around and drove towards my dad's house. At that time, there were few streetlights and no buildings in the area. The hospital and school hadn't been built yet, so it was just me, my sister's car, and a long stretch of highway. From the corner of my eye, I sensed movement out of the passenger side window, like an animal running on the inside of the right-of-way fence that ran parallel to the highway. I expected to see a horse when I looked in that direction, but what I saw made no sense. Suddenly, this thing jumped the fence, coming within 3 feet of the passenger side of the car. The creature was white from head to foot and ran on all fours. Its overall form appeared like that of a greyhound, except much larger. It was about 4 or so feet tall to the top of its back. I couldn't tell if its feet were actually touching the ground or not. It had canine-like features, including a long snout like a dog's or wolf's, but that was where the similarity ended. The creature was running alongside the vehicle, its speed and strength apparently limitless. It wouldn't be left behind no matter how fast I went. Besides, I was going nearly 60 miles an hour. No animal, not even a horse, could keep up that pace. Was it even possible to outrun it? I had to try. I sped up, my hands sweating on the steering wheel, knuckles white. The speedometer climbed. 60, 65, 70. I gripped the steering wheel even harder to keep from swerving, my heart in my throat. I looked away from the road to try to get a better look at it and immediately wished I hadn't. This thing had a mouth full of long, jagged, gleaming white teeth. It turned its head and looked straight at me. Its eyes were glowing a fiery yellow-orange, like hot burning coals glowing in the darkness, what I imagined hellfire looked like. Its lips were stretched back in a sort of sinister grin, exposing its wicked teeth. It looked straight into my eyes like it was seeing right through me, into my soul. Its gaze was intelligent, sinister, hypnotic, and evil, and the message was clear. I could grab you, rip you to pieces, and eat you alive if I so chose, and there would be nothing you could do about it. I knew in that moment that this thing was pure evil. Drenched in a cold sweat, I slid down in my seat as far as I could, while still able to see over the steering wheel, and slammed the gas pedal to the floorboard. Afraid of what I might see, I didn't look in the direction of the creature again, and I deliberately didn't look in my rearview mirror. I had realized that whatever this was, it was a predator, and in that moment, I was its prey. The only thing I could do was to get as far away from it as quickly as I could. The next thing I remember is sliding into the gravel driveway outside my dad's house and running inside, slamming the door behind me. My dad looked up in surprise and asked what was wrong. Breathlessly, I told him my experience. He nodded sagely, not a hint of disbelief on his face, and said the words I already knew in my heart. "Son, you just saw a skinwalker." I, of course, knew what a skinwalker was. My dad and other relatives had talked about them throughout my life, but I never expected to encounter one myself. I tried to wrap my mind around what this meant, that I had seen and been chased by a skinwalker. The one concrete thought I could form in that moment was, holy is real. Yeah, it reminds me a lot of some of the other stories we've done, including the cherry bomb muffler story.
Yeah.
Just the description of the Dogman itself reminds me of that guy that saw the Bigfoot and Dogman at the same time.
Oh, that crazy like battle story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
It's just like super like demonic and just pure evil.
Yeah, there are a lot of elements in that story that did remind me of Dogman stories you hear in other parts of the country. Like even the like looking through me, you know, that line stood out to me, that like, you know, as if it's not even seeing, it doesn't even care. It's almost that sort of demonic thing where it's like, you are nothing. It's looking through me. It's got that grin. Terrifying.
So this is supposed to be a skinwalker though, and not Dogman? Or are they interchangeable?
No, they're not interchangeable. That's kind of the interesting distinction too, is because I know that they're interchanged a lot.
Sounds a lot like a Dogman.
It does. I think what they share maybe in some of the Dogmen, except for the Dogman apologists out there,
Dogman apologists,
is the evil that you hear in a lot of the Dogman stories, or whatever entity there is. You know, that kind of like looking through you into your soul, that it just wanted you to know that it can destroy you.
Right. Doesn't actually ever kill anyone, as far as we know.
We've had people argue that.
It does. It definitely does.
So,
but yeah, it's weird that it doesn't sometimes.
The same kind of effect, but the distinction I think that's important, obviously, is in this belief system, where these things come from, there's a recorded track record of these things manifesting from the process of becoming a Navajo witch, specifically. And that's usually the darkest of deeds
Oh,
required.
that's right. Yeah.
For instance, we covered this on way back on the first Skinwalker episode we did, but the idea that you have to kill someone close to you, usually in your own family, preferably a child, maybe your child. This allows you to...
God, that's dark. That's part of the ritual.
Yeah. And there's an account from a man named Haas Lors, who is a ESL or English as second language teacher, a white man who lives on the reservation or did for a while, who's friends with actually Stanley, the investigator, because Stanley and John went out and investigated on his land and near his land at Satan's Butte. And some of that I think we'll probably have in the expansion, but...
I think it's pronounced Satan's butt.
That's how you pronounce it, Satan's butt.
Oh, nice lighthearted moment.
It's Butte, right?
Yeah, butty.
Satan's butt?
Satan's booty. Anyways,
It's where everything bad comes from.
That's true.
atop of Satan's booty.
Satan's booty sounds like a liquor or something.
Sounds like a pirate's chest.
A pirate's treasure.
You will continue to say this wrong throughout the episode, but it's Satan, Butte, not Satan's, Butte. It's not possessive.
Point being, there is a story that I think we'll get to later, might be in the expansion, but as a creative writing teacher and English as second language teacher, this man, Haas Lors, here's a pretty terrifying account from one of his students that ends up being backed by other people in the Navajo Nation, medicine men and the like, who are aware of this woman in the story, who is the mother of the child, doing something very similar to become a witch,
Oh, yeah.
skinwalker.
Freaky story. Yeah.
So anyways, that is the distinction I think it's important to make when it comes to dogmen maybe in, Tennessee or Kentucky versus, Southwest Navajo land, dogman type creatures.
What's interesting too is this skinwalker Yenaldooshi. He described it, and by the way, you can hear him describe it in his own words on Unsolved Mysteries, I believe, the latest incarnation of it on Netflix.
Oh yeah, season 3, episode 5, I think.
Yes, but he tells it in his own words there as well.
The author.
But he describes it as it's all white.
Mm-hmm.
You don't hear that a lot with dogmen, where it's all white sort of.
Are we going to make it through the night, guys?
I think hopefully
It's a far run from Navajo land, I hope.
At least I'm in the city.
that's true.
We're going to have a little bit harder time creeping around Austin at night,
Yeah,
where they could just run right inside in Clinton.
you are closer though in distance.
That's true.
It's true.
But they have what's the word?
Dimensional
Yeah,
Teleportive power,
transportation.
exactly. Teleportive.
Yeah.
interdimensional little holes they can throw out there.
Let's hope not.
Let's hope not. Yeah, just get some black obsidian. I think that's a protection thing.
Yeah, and if any of you listeners out there have any experiences and want to share and want to remain anonymous, you are definitely welcome to remain anonymous, but we're definitely interested to hear more of these harrowing accounts.
That visual of being out there. Imagine being out there on one of those stark highways at nighttime in the middle of the night, no one around for miles, and then you just happen to look over and you see this thing.
Yeah, just demonic grins.
Hard to really imagine it.
That's why I'm illustrating it for you, John.
I mean, it's not hard to imagine it. I don't mean it's hard.
Did a great job, Chris.
It's hard to really imagine what it would feel like.
oh, I know.
Like, I don't know how you just don't crash the car just straight out of fear.
Probably that fight or flight survival instinct.
Yeah. Luckily, you're in a car. You can keep driving.
Yeah.
But
That shock.
Oh, the grin in my mind is terrifying.
Yeah, so how do you respond to that? How do you react? How do others react? Well, when Stanley got home, his Navajo relatives weren't surprised of hearing of this story. And some of them actually suspected, which I don't know if you might have thought of this too, John, that it was the elderly man that was the shapeshifter.
Like it was a trap.
The idea of being picked up late at night, asking for a ride, and then being dropped off pretty much in the middle of nowhere to then begin the chase.
yeah.
Now, that's not what Stanley believed. Well, Stanley didn't feel any indication of malice or ill intent towards him.
That's how they trick you.
Perhaps. But Stanley went on to say that my concerns were much larger than one old man. And here's a good quote, I think, that kind of sets him up for what he will go on to do as a paranormal ranger.
Yeah, because this is years before.
Yeah, again, this happened a few years before. But he goes on to say, quote, "My entire worldview had been challenged. All the myths and legends, every story my parents, aunts and uncles, grandparents, cousins, and neighbors had told me of shapeshifters and ghosts and UFOs suddenly loomed up in a brand new light, full of terrifying possibility. What if some of it was actually real, like the Skinwalker, the owl shapeshifter, the UFOs on the reservation, the work of the medicine men, the presence in my mother's home? My chest tightened as I remembered each of them. I had to consider the possibility that at least some of them weren't make-believe, weren't fairy tales, weren't myths better left in the past to collect dust. What if some of those stories were part of everyday reality, glimpses into a wider, stranger world that most Westerners were either unaware of or simply chose to ignore? Seeing the Skinwalker was an awakening. My mind had been opened. The world teemed with possibilities. No matter how skeptical or scientific my nature, I could never entirely go back to not believing. I would always have to ask, what if? What if monsters were real?
They are.
And that leads him to his work as a paranormal ranger.
Yeah.
Round them up.
Round them up. Who are you going to call? Paranormal Rangers.
That's right.
Chris, what happens next?
Stan and Jonathan. They seem like very nice guys, by the way, watching them on that program.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Link in the show notes.
And the book is excellent, by the way. Very well written. Definitely captivating, draws you in.
Yeah.
But yes, so this event happened before they become Paranormal Rangers, before Stan is inducted into this. It never existed before, this sort of branch of the Navajo Rangers.
SPU.
But their whole thing was that they were, they always saw themselves as civilians in uniform. Like their whole purpose was to help people, that they weren't there above other people in their community. They were, servants there to protect and serve. And around 2000, the chief held a department-wide meeting, and he was there to discuss a very specific matter that had occurred, a matter that was going to change the course of Stan's life and John's as well. Apparently, an elderly woman in the Chuska Mountains complained about witnessing a Bigfoot. It was terrifying to her. Apparently, this thing went over into her sheep corral and picked up a sheep and just walked off with it. So, of course, she calls the Navajo Rangers, and 2 rookie rangers are sent out there to investigate, and they don't take her seriously. They're kind of making jokes. So she calls and complains, and the Chief Butler is his name, the chief uses this complaint to address a problem in the department, which is that either people are disregarding very real fears of a lot of residents on the reservation that are supernatural. They're disregarding them either because they don't believe, but mostly because they just don't want to be around these things that they believe have a very real reality.
Right. They're freaked out.
Yes. So in this moment, the chief looks over at Stan and John and says, you two are going to be in charge of this special paranormal investigation unit, basically. They were going to be sent to all the major cases, all the major supernatural events that were occurring on the reservation. The room's kind of silent at this point. No one's laughing, as you might expect. No one's snickering. And it's because, as I mentioned before, a lot of the people in the department, even though they wouldn't go investigate these accounts, a lot of times it's because they knew there was a truth to them, because they were raised with these beliefs. This begins their induction into this sort of paranormal investigating. John's actually pretty thrilled because John's sort of a nerd when it comes to sci-fi. And
just like our John.
I think he was a fan of the X-Files. Yeah, just like our John. And so he was pretty pumped about the assignment. But at this point, Stan, even though he had his Skinwalker experience, there was still part of him that was very skeptical about a lot of the stuff that they would end up investigating. And that's because of his background with having a foot in 2 worlds, the Western culture and the traditional beliefs. But this Bigfoot sighting that this lady complained about, this assignment.
This is their first big case, right?
Yeah, their first big case. Well, this is what that complaint led into this. When they are sent to investigate what would become known as the San Juan River Valley Bigfoot sightings. And this introduction to this is all because of a case with a boy and his BB gun and a Bigfoot standoff. This I call the boy and the Bigfoot. The day was turning to evening, and the sun was low in the sky. A Navajo mother told her young teenage son to go outside and run off the coyotes that were disturbing their sheep in the field below their house. They could hear the sheep bleating and running around, clearly terrified. The boy hurried outside, BB gun in hand, where he discovered that what was disturbing the sheep wasn't coyotes or feral dogs or any other predators typical to the San Juan River area, but something much stranger. He was running so fast down the incline that he almost didn't see it. He barely stopped himself from careening straight into it and slid on the steep incline, falling backward into the dirt. When he looked up, there was a massive creature standing over him. He was taller than a man, perhaps 7 or 8 feet tall, with broad, muscular shoulders. He
It was covered all over in dark hair and had canine-like teeth. It smelled like a wet dog. The boy dropped his BB gun and scrambled back up the embankment to his mother, who called the local authorities to say her son had seen a Bigfoot. The authorities laughed at the report, even though others in the area had already called into their dispatch with similar sightings. A story about the Bigfoot sightings even made it into a local paper, but the police still did not take it seriously or investigate the woman's report. Finally, determined to have her case investigated, the woman reached out to the Navajo Rangers, and we decided to use the resources we had to help her family if we could. John and I drove out to the northeastern edge of the reservation, to a remote area of patchwork green fields and flat-topped, dusty mesas, with the fast-flowing San Juan River snaking through it all. We marveled at the many valleys and light-colored mesas that dotted the landscape and breathed the damp, slightly fishy smell of the river in the air, wondering what we would find here. Our aim was to interview the family and see if there was anything to their claims worth investigating. We had no idea at the time that this would become our first big paranormal case, with Bigfoot sightings up and down the San Juan River in a rural area on the outskirts of Farmington, New Mexico. We figured it would go the way of the Chusca Mountain Bigfoot case, with us poking around and not finding much at all. But that's not what happened.
Indeed, that is not what happened. They find a lot. And the first thing they find is the boy. They interview him. He's visibly shaken. He's got big, dark, wide eyes. He's tearing up. He didn't want to go outside anymore. He was afraid to leave his house because of the trauma of seeing this massive thing standing over him unexpectedly. So John and Stan are understandably very sympathetic, and they can tell the boy is telling the truth, and they want to find out whatever it is, whether it's something paranormal or just some, large animal of some kind that maybe the boy is misidentifying. They want to make sure there isn't something dangerous in the area. However, when they go out back, they find clear evidence of a disturbance that's not indicative of any sort of natural animal in that area. So that's their first kind of sign that there's something wrong. They find foot impressions in the muddy riverbed that are 14 to 18 inches long, 5 inches wide. It's a big foot.
Oh, yeah, and there are pictures of this that we'll have up on the YouTube video in the show notes.
I'm sharing pictures of that. They find tracks indicating, this is interesting, a 5-foot stride. And a 5-foot stride, apparently, for an average human like us, John a little more because he's a bit taller than we are, but 2.5 feet is the average human gait, 2.5 to 3 feet. This was a 5-foot gait. So they knew they were dealing with something pretty unusual. But I thought this was an interesting quote. He said, this comes from the book, quote, "Many of the footprints were found among bullhead thorns, whose sharp, poisonous quarter-inch thorns I remembered keenly from those tormenting push-ups of my police academy days. Whatever had left the tracks apparently walked through the stinging bullheads like they were mere grass, leaving no trace of blood or injury behind." So Stan and John, they hit the streets. They're canvassing vast areas, as we already talked about how large these areas can be, how distant these stretches of land can be between neighbors. The residents are spread out, typically a half a mile in this area or more, so they have to drive to each of these places to interview people. So it takes weeks and weeks.
Right.
And in the course of these interviews in the San Juan River area, more than 30 firsthand sightings were uncovered by John and Stan. So they realized this has been going on for a long time. And it ranged from, young to old. The sightings range from just finding very large footprints like we were just discussing, or actually witnessing this creature. Some reported livestock being disturbed or even killed, like one example where a woman said that something had torn the wool right off of the sheep.
Oh, yeah.
Like it looked like it had been picked up and then just pulled off. And the signs of death were just basically had been bled out after it had been the skin had, or the, pretty gnarly.
Skinned alive. That's crazy. What could do that? What could lift a sheep and just rip the wool off?
Right. And it ties right back into that first account when that complaint was given about the woman who saw a sheep being picked up out of the corral and taken away by one of these creatures, allegedly. So it ties in there.
What would that be for? If he's not eating the meat,
the wool,
it would be maybe like a nest,
maybe a pillow,
perhaps in the cave, maybe. Creepy.
Yeah.
Sheep ripping monsters.
Terrifying.
Oh, speaking of potential homespun Bigfoot bedding.
Uh-huh.
I'm sure you guys are going to agree with me, but no matter how supernatural the big guy's crafting skills are, there's no way his bed sheets could be as magical as Miracle Made sheets. Oh, so true. This episode brought to you by Miracle Made. And there's good reason for that. We love these sheets for real.
Yes, we do.
If you haven't heard by now, these sheets are temperature regulating, so they keep you cool at night. They've got silver-infused fabric, which not only magically allows these things to be thermoregulating and keep you cool when you need to be and warm when you need to be, the silver also helps to prevent up to 99.7% of bacterial growth. So no matter how sweaty you get from terrifying Hatman encounters in the middle of your night, Miracle Made will help to keep you fresh and clean.
Oh, it's so good.
Also, they're super comfortable, maybe my favorite part about them.
Yeah.
They've got a nice weight to them, and they feel so cool and crisp when you slide into bed.
So slidey.
So upgrade your sleep like we have. Go to trymiracle.com/beliefhole and use the code BELIEFHOLE to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/beliefhole to treat yourself. You deserve it.
Maybe so.
And thank you to Miracle Made for sponsoring this episode.
Thanks for that.
Anyway, back to the Bigfoot sheep assault. Yeah, some of the reports were, according to Stan, genuinely shocking. That sounded, he said, more like a witchcraft situation with entities that seemed a little more associated with that sort of witchcraft in, the legends of that area, associated with shapeshifters, things like that. But overall, he said that the majority of the eyewitness accounts were describing what people would call a Bigfoot type creature. There was that one case where a fist is driven into the side of a trailer.
Yeah.
And you can see the comparison of a man's fist with the knuckles of this fist. And he shows like how hard it would be. You'd have to hit this thing to actually make a dent in the side of this, because it's a trailer home,
I wish you had that clip. Yeah, because that is.
I know. I just ran out of time. I was going to show it to John, but pretty incredible. I thought was interesting too is one woman actually thought that one of these things was a hitchhiker and slowed down to pick it up until she realized it was covered in hair and had no recognizable human facial features. So she took off.
It's terrifying.
But anyways, yeah, all this to say there were plenty of terrified, traumatized people, and that there were a lot of people who were afraid to go outside of their homes at night.
Yeah.
And this had been a problem that had been ignored for a good period of time. There was one case in particular in this area that really piqued Stan and John's interest, and it's because of how detailed it was and would lead to a pretty major investigation with a lot of resources. This I call Trailer Terrorizer.
A young mother named Brenda Harris had the most detailed narrative to relate. One night, she was home along with her young children while her husband was at work. She said she had left for work around 10:30 p.m. for a graveyard shift. The windows of her mobile home were open since it was summertime, letting in a cool breeze. Around 11 p.m., only 30 minutes after her husband's departure, she heard something very heavy walking on the porch. It could have been a big dog or a mountain lion, but then that something started turning her doorknob. Again and again, it rattled the knob, as if trying to get inside. Finally gathering her courage, Brenda walked to the door and turned the deadbolt. When it clicked, the thing on her porch let go of the knob. She unlocked the bottom lock and swung the door open to the night. What she saw there left her awestruck. A tall, black-haired creature stood framed in the doorway, staring back at her from the darkness. It was scraggly, not muscular, as most of the other witnesses had described the creature, but it was still terrifying. Perhaps the creature was also afraid of Brenda because it darted off the porch, running west. Brenda relocked the door and shut all the windows, which proved wise because 30 minutes later, the creature came back and repeated its curious behavior. This happened again and again throughout the night until the sun finally rose and the creature disappeared. Fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a fun TGIF night with the kids.
It's interesting because it reminds me of Stanley mentions in the book, I believe, the kind of traditional beliefs of the Navajo, some of them being don't do much after dark. Like the dark is for things of the night, things of the dark. And you shouldn't really be out and about because of these kinds of things. You shouldn't be chopping wood at night.
No whistling.
No, definitely no whistling.
Heard that before.
It's interesting. It's just, I mean, we all grew up with these kinds of stories, and I'm sure for kids, don't.
Yeah.
But I mean, specifically, even like adults don't, you're just not really supposed to, at least in traditional belief, be doing much in the night. And that's because that's the domain of the witches. And
Nothing good comes after sundown.
Nothing good happens after 2 a.m. I always heard that. But I think I was more related to drinking continuously.
all the bars are closed at 2 a.m. So there's nothing fun after that.
Go home. Don't wander into people's houses looking for a party. Doesn't end well.
That's true.
Anyway, yes, but this will lead us. We're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to see why this triggered an investigation, a manhunt in the brush and brambles in the San Juan River Valley, and what they discover there, along with pretty terrifying accounts
From the sky.
From the sky. So you will definitely want to stick around for that. And in the expansion, guys, if you are not a member yet, sign up to be a member. Go to believehole.com and hit the big red expansion button. Well, you'll get double the episodes and ad-free. Yes! Which is very important if you would like to avoid the ads.
Yes.
Extra, 100 and some episodes now?
At least, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a treasure trove. It's a Satan's bounty, although
It's a Satan's booty.
the Satan's booty. Yes, but not evil. So maybe it's a godly bounty. Anyway, but in the expansion, we're going to be diving deeper into this really excellent book and probably playing some clips, people's experiences in their own words.
And related stories, actually, an interview I found, old interview from Haas Lors. We'll play bits of that because that's fascinating.
Yeah.
I found on a YouTube channel, and it's just some other related Skinwalker experiences out in the Southwest.
Yes, and a haunted poltergeist case, an office building, which leads to some pretty incredible synchronicities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So check that out in the expansion. And for the rest of you in the near future, we will see you after the break.
We'll be back.
Boink.
Don't be sad.
Welcome back.
Welcome back, everybody.
We missed you.
Round 2.
Round 2. Welcome back into the window area that is
The Navajo Reservation.
the Navajo Reservation. Yes, this is we're trekking back into the desolate canyon lands with our good friend and author Stan here and his partner Jonathan as we explore more strangeness out there. And to step right back into where we left off, we, if you recall,
Harry High Strangeness.
yes, more hairy high strangeness. Good throwback, Chair.
Thanks.
So if you recall, before our break, we had the trailer Terrorizer, this strange encounter with this scraggly, unusually thin and gaunt sort of Bigfoot creature coming and showing up on Brenda's doorstep and playing with her handle.
What?
Playing with her door handle.
Oh, playing with
Jingle, jangle, jangle.
That was a creepy moment.
Yeah.
The jangle of the handle.
That was weird. The fact that it kept coming back and doing the same thing was kind of odd, and it didn't come in.
That was weird.
Yeah.
Turning.
Wasn't coming inside.
What did he think he expected the second time?
I don't know.
When he turned the door handle, hoping
Maybe a
that-
treat.
What would he have done? I guess the question, just kind of peek his head in and
Maybe he was hungry.
maybe
Maybe one little snack.
A little woman snack.
Some people do leave out peanut butter and
a
bananas.
woman snack. It is strange though.
But anyway, so after this experience, they do that initial search and find approximately 18 inches long, these footprints again,
Right.
4 inches wide.
Massive.
Yeah. And then, they realize that this creature could have torn the door off of the trailer if it wanted to. So again, very bizarre.
Horrifying, really.
But this Brenda person, pretty fascinating character out here on the res. She actually, this is a quick aside. I'm not going to go into detail here, but she actually had gone to neighbors first at a some sort of neighborhood gathering, town council kind of thing, and basically like outspokenly said, like, this is happening to me. Is this happening to anybody? And expected really everybody to say like, no, you're nuts. And it turned out all of her neighbors, all of her nearby neighbors had seen this thing, had experiences. Anyway, so they get involved. Paranormal Rangers are on the case.
Ah, yes.
Yes. And you're in good hands.
Better than a rescue ranger, I'd argue.
Yes.
Allstate.
Allstate?
You're in good
You're
hands.
in good hands with all.
It's like, what? Not a sponsor. So Stan, he is intrigued. He and Jonathan are intrigued, but they're still skeptical about these latest reports. But more than anything, they're concerned. They know that there are people that are frightened. But this is where it gets fun. This is where I think it's pretty interesting, very cinematic. What happens next? They wanted to provide answers for the citizens. So what do? After they conduct their normal interviews and their initial field work, John and Stan decide they're going to conduct a stakeout. Which to me was funny because you mentioned Maximum Overdrive earlier, John, in your story. And
Great movie.
it made me think of Sheen's son.
Sheen's?
Emilio Estevez.
Oh, yeah.
Martin Sheen's son. I don't know why I went with him first. But Emilio Estevez is in Maximum Overdrive. And Stakeout. Remember that movie?
Oh, Stakeout.
With Charlie Sheen and Emilio Estevez?
Yes.
Great movie.
Was that Charlie Sheen?
That's the connection I made in my brain.
You think of Men at Work?
Maybe you're right. Robot Lady?
The movie Stakeout, 1987, was an action buddy comedy starring Richard Dreyfuss and Emilio Estevez as two cops assigned to surveillance duty.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, this is where it gets fun. The Stakeout, they decide they're going to conduct a 3-day, pretty intense operation. It's overnight surveillance. They get 7 guys, tactical team, including people with SWAT experience, military experience. They've got tons of great gear. They've got night vision cameras, thermal cameras, and they're packing heat. They are locked and loaded, and they're in for a serious investigation because they think there is true threat to this neighborhood and the people living within this neighborhood.
Right.
So they head out.
And this was in the San Juan River Valley?
Yes, this is part of that San Juan River Valley Bigfoot flap, I guess you could call it.
Okay.
And this is a quote from the book, Paranormal Ranger.
There's a saying about the Navajo Rangers that my partner John is fond of using. Quote, 2 Rangers together, that's a convention. Because we were so few in number and spread out over the 27,000 miles of reservation, it was extremely unusual to see several Rangers together working on a single case. Our tactical team for this operation included Rangers from other parts of the reservation who had to drive a long distance to participate. Of all the paranormal investigations I would be part of over the years, this one involved the most department personnel. It was a massive undertaking.
So I grabbed that quote because I thought it was illustrative in how serious they were taking this investigation and how concerned they were for the people there. So they go on to search, they're tracking for days, they're going through really dense, kind of claustrophobic brush, quote, moving like shadows through the brush, staying silent to avoid detection from whatever this thing is. They want to find it, gather any evidence they can, and hopefully capture it.
Did they capture
No, but wait, there's more.
Maybe we probably would have heard about it.
Way to spoil it. But they're haunted by the kind of unusual grunts and howls, those lonely howls that you hear in other documentaries and things like that. But it was very unusual for this area. He said these are not animal sounds that they would hear on the reservation. So definitely paranormal in that manner. And they keep finding these footprints. And this is a quick quote that I think is kind of freaky when you consider what his realization is in this moment.
Its footprints were massive, and we continued to find new ones during our reconnaissance, meaning that the creature was out there in the river bottom with us.
So that realization that this thing is still out here. They're finding fresh footprints.
That'd be unsettling.
And then they find the log. I think this is pretty crazy. It's huge. It's over 1,000 pounds. This is a log that is moved not by man or by machine, pretty obviously, because it's in this muddy river area, but it wasn't there the day before, but it was moved to block their path.
Right, this was a massive log. Was it a cut log or just a log that had been in the woods?
Yeah, it was a fallen log, but it had been moved to block the path to keep them from easily tracking this thing.
Something placed it there. It didn't just fall down from a tree.
Right. So he thought this indicated intelligence.
Right.
This wasn't just some dumb animal, obviously. This is something that was not only extremely strong, but pretty intelligent.
Right.
Then he realized what he was up against. Quote, "It was now clear to me that we were truly on the trail of a creature that might be as intelligent as it was enormous, and that it was just as aware of us as we were of it. It could step into our path at any moment, using the same strength that had moved the log on our much frailer forms," which would not be good. "It was only wise to be afraid, but my training had taught me not to give in to the fear, and besides, we were armed to the teeth." So they had some defensive weapons. Anyways, the breakthrough. The breakthrough in this case, at least I think the really important, significant evidence is that they discovered a tuft of scraggly dark hair. And yes, it was on the barbed wire. They sent it in, DNA analysis, came back and said, unknown carnivore, which he thought was pretty incredible because the DNA database has samples from animals all over the world. And obviously in this area, they would have the samples for a carnivore.
Right.
They could not match it to anything.
Yeah, it's not like a undersea creature.
Exactly. It's not like an undersea creature.
Well, because, we have what percentage of the ocean have we explored? Like a very small percentage.
Yeah.
20%.
But we have most of the land explored, most of it.
Yeah. I mean, that's always the kind of
Don't we?
Yeah. Except the inner Earth, but yeah.
I'm talking about the outer Earth, Jer.
The surface land. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there are jungle regions and things that people haven't trekked.
For the most part, though, we are
Right.
fairly, not to mention Google Earth.
Yes. The digital creatures as well.
What?
The digital creatures.
What does that mean?
Digital creatures?
You said Google Earth, like using the Google Earth to identify.
No, I'm just saying Google Earth is like everywhere on Earth. Like it sees everything.
Yes.
And it would tell us if it found a dog man.
It wouldn't lie to us.
Although it doesn't use LiDAR, so you can't see it through tree canopies and things like that.
Can't go everywhere.
That's what you think.
At least we don't have access.
It's mounted to a car.
You
so
don't think they have LiDAR on every Google camera?
I mean, not available to us.
No.
And all the people in the know, John, know that there's Bigfoot because they've seen them on Google Earth.
Are we talking about Bigfoot or Dogman?
Bigfoot.
Okay, I got confused.
This is all nonsense. That's the question I was going to ask, John. Do we have all the animals on the Earth, or at least most of them, at least I would think in continental United States and other
Pretty broad spectrum.
populated areas, they would probably have all of those included in the
Yeah.
database. I don't know offhand. Robot Lady would know, but
Yes, DNA hair tests can typically identify all large carnivores in the continental United States. This includes species like wolves, cougars, bobcats, lynxes, and coyotes.
I mean, they're discovering new species all the time, but usually it's insects in the Amazon, places like that.
yeah, so you'd think they would have, if it was something in the area, or there were no matches.
Right. Well, that's the kind of his whole point. Like, obviously, in this area, especially where it's a vast, pretty open landscape, we know the carnivores that are there.
Right.
It should be in the database, but it wasn't. But so what happens?
I don't.
Nothing. I mean, despite collecting the evidence, they did not capture the big guy. As you said earlier, Jeremy, yes, you probably would have heard about it. Leaving the case technically unsolved, just like pretty much every, real X-Files television episode where it's like, there's something there, but you can't, what can you do
Right.
with it? But at least the local community at this point, they realize that the Rangers have their back. They're believing them, which did make a big difference in the community in that area.
Gain that trust.
They're like storm chasers,
Yeah,
but
No, they are.
monster chasers.
Yeah, that's true.
They help the community as they go.
exactly. Storms are kind of monsters.
Yeah, they're probably a lot more deadly than Bigfoot.
There is a higher body count with storms, that's for sure.
By the way, I don't know when this drops. I'm sure this will be in the past, but hearts go out to you guys in Florida and the Carolinas and all on the East Coast. I just saw, you said tornadoes. I just saw crazy footage of before the hurricane, was it Melvin?
Yeah.
Made landfall. These tornadoes just appearing and
They just rip through the middle of Florida.
yeah.
I saw them like appear on like bridges.
I saw a video too where it goes over the bridge and the
Yeah.
cameras are shaking. And
It's terrifying.
While people are driving over it.
I already hate bridges.
someone at the premiere premiere, by the way, guys, go to our YouTube channel and subscribe to hang out with us in the chat when we do premieres of these episodes. But I forget who it was, but they were in Florida and their power was off, but they were chatting during the premiere, I guess on their mobile phone.
That was the last premiere and they just took another hit.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a person I work with that her house was like not destroyed, but kind of messed up from the last one. And then she had to evacuate for this one.
That's so crazy.
Yeah,
I love Florida, but man, that would suck
I know.
so bad.
Yeah.
They definitely took a serious weather toll this last month.
Yeah,
Anyways, yeah, our hearts go out to you.
absolutely, guys.
From the hole to you.
Hang in there. Stay dry
Stay dry.
and alive.
Yeah, hopefully your home exists.
But anyway, back on dry land. This is sort of when Stan starts to wonder about, now he believes in this thing. Still a little skeptical until he has his own eyewitness account later on. But at this point, he starts to wonder about what could this thing be? How can it just come and go? And he starts to wonder about the Navajo stories that he learned about growing up, the giants from the creation story.
All right.
But could these be things from another world? Could there be places on the reservation that are gateways? Is there something about the land that allows for this sort of in and outer travel? Is there something about other places around the world that allow for this sort of thing if it is indeed true?
Reminds me of Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah, exactly. Another great area. How close is that to this? Is this pretty close to?
Yeah. Well, it's in Utah, Skinwalker Ranch, and he actually mentions it in the book.
But a very similar activity as far as Bigfoot sightings alongside lights, abduction phenomena, Skinwalker strange dog-like creature things. Like this sort of thing happens in these regions.
Yeah. Was it Stanley in the book talking about how, I think it was Satan's booty?
But
Satan's Butte?
Satan's Butte, yes.
And the experiences there, I can't remember if it was Stanley or if it was Haas Lors, who was witnessing the phenomenon at the time out there in his place in Greaseland? Greasewood, Arizona, which is right near the foot of Satan's Butte. Oh, I think it might have been Stanley maybe had said that it had fallen right on the same longitudinal line as Skinwalker Ranch. And another one or two of these odd places where these happenings, very similar phenomena in these different places. And so then the idea of ley lines comes up, of course. And are there these portals, these vortexes, these hot spots where these things can manifest? And is there something to the geographical locations?
Yeah, I think there is.
Let's move there.
Do some real exploring. You know, if you ever do find yourself getting caught in a manifesting portal unexpectedly, happens all the time. You definitely want to be feeling your best. You sure do. And let's say, for example, you were out on a camping adventure with some friends and having some drinks, and the next morning you're confronted by an interdimensional gateway. Oh my God. You're going to want to make sure that you'd planned for any occasion, including this, and had brought along some Zbiotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink to help you feel refreshed on this fateful day.
I'm not sure.
This episode brought to you by Zbiotics. Well, what is Zbiotics, you may be asking? If you don't know, let me fill you in. Zbiotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic.
Wow.
It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. And here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic, icky byproduct in the gut.
Ooh.
It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this product down.
That's pretty cool.
Just remember to make Zbiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow, regardless of where the portals may lead. Yes! And to be completely honest with you guys, I wasn't sure what to expect when I tried this for the first time. And one night we were planning on a premiere, and I knew I was going to have some cocktails to chill out after the production week, so I thought I'd give it a try. And I was honestly pretty blown away because the next morning I woke up and rode 10 miles on my bike.
I'm alive!
Which can be hard to do even without drinking the night before. Zbiotics really did help that morning. But don't take it from me, guys. Try it for yourself. Go to zbiotics.com/beliefhole to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use BeliefHole at checkout. Zbiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're not satisfied for any reason, they're going to give you your money back. No questions asked. What do you got to lose? And once again, that's zbiotics.com/beliefhole and use the code BeliefHole at checkout for 15% off.
Link in the show notes.
So he did, in fact, end up seeing a Bigfoot.
Oh, did he?
Years later, 2014. Yeah, he actually back at the Chusca Mountains, that first case where that complaint came from the lady who had her sheep stolen. He actually ends up having his own personal encounter there with his cousin Tony and another investigator, Dusty, who are, in fact, paranormal investigators by trade. There was a report of Bigfoot activity. The authors, he goes up there basically, and I'll just tell you guys for the sake of you guys, but
Thanks.
ends up using night vision, but even without the night vision can see this thing emerge from the forest basically, and says he described it as being like 6 feet tall, at least 6 feet tall, covered in hair, obviously not a bear walking on two legs. It moved like with a gait like a man, and said the body was almost ape-like, but the facial features were, I forget how he described it, but basically like kind of not ape, not man, just something completely new to him.
Something in between.
Long arms that hung down, the typical Sasquatch stuff, no neck basically. Anyways, he watched it carefully, feeling a sense of shock and then disbelief, and it basically moves towards them and then kind of suddenly vanishes. And I'm not sure if it was in the terrain or they vanished in front of him, but either way, this gave him, again, that sense of like, okay, this is definitely something that's moving in and out of dimension and in and out of something we can see. It's got some sort of ability. That's where he comes to believe that in the end. And just like Bigfoot and other things that seem to come and go, what else does in this area? Tons of UFO sightings and abductions as well. And Jerry, you have a case, I think, from the book to discuss, right?
Yes, beyond the earthbound phenomena that is bizarre and inexplicable, of course, you have the sky. And this place is the massiveness of the sky and the way in which the sky connects to the earth out there. In fact, there's a quote from the book where Stanley describes it like this. He says, it's not hard to understand why UFO sightings are common on the reservation. When you consider the vastness and remoteness of the landscape, there is little ambient light on the reservation, so any crafts coming into our atmosphere are highly visible.
Makes sense.
Just imagine that like expanse of sky in the night and just
endless horizon.
Anything up there moving around, doing anything.
Driving through New Mexico reminds me of that a lot.
Oh, yeah. New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada.
Yeah.
Hauntingly romantic.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Nevada's a strange place to drive through.
Yeah.
It's like 90 mile per hour highways and just cows hanging out by the road and
phantom hitchhikers.
It's a weird place.
Yeah.
But definitely plenty of skyline to imagine that happening.
Yeah, and the lack of light pollution, especially on the reservation.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big part of it.
So that combination of endless horizon, no light pollution.
It's flat forever. You can see the visibility is fantastic and just, no light pollution.
Optimal place to have experiences or see things or be experienced upon. As might be the case.
Remember that episode we did where it was like a couple holding each other's hands? That wasn't in New Mexico, was it?
Are you talking about the Mojave?
You know what I'm talking about? Like it was like a demonic sort of encounter.
The Mojave incident?
Was it the Mojave?
Were they in an RV?
No, not that one.
Okay.
They saw it from, it was an expansion episode, I think.
Oh.
They saw, like, there was like another couple that stopped and they both walked out and they were excited.
That was Australia.
That was Australia?
Yeah.
That was Kelly Cahill.
That was one of the freakiest stories I ever remember recording.
Yeah.
Yeah, where something comes down. Oh, yeah, that was the one with the
three dark hooded figures that came down and like
hovered on the ground. Remember, like it came at them very quickly, but like gliding at them with red eyes.
And they were basically saying like, you're not, it was the kind of feeling like you're nothing.
Right.
Like I can destroy you type of.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Weren't they like telepathically telling them they were useless humans, basically?
She felt the goal was to like demoralize in this kind of demonic, nasty way, just making you feel mockery of your beliefs. And
what did they say though that was?
They said like one thing.
Something specific that was so disturbing to me, I remember at the time.
There was one part where one of the voices of this entity coming towards her was trying to keep her calm, or, not really trying to keep her calm, but using that kind of like, use this voice that was like the best voice actor ever, but still had no emotion in it. It was very unsettling. At one point, he referred to her as his daughter, but he did it because she would have been praying to her Father God. So she felt he was making a mockery of that. It's just this kind of weird, intimate, dark.
Seems pretty demonic, yeah.
Yeah. Believe it or not, who knows? But that story was really freaky. That was the Kelly Cahill encounter.
Cahill encounter, that's what it was.
One of the most, I think, iconic encounters from Australia.
Anyways, the whole scenery just reminded me of this. That kind of
stark.
I'm sure it was very similar in that Australia expanse, like just endless sky.
These are the kinds of places we talked about that in our Alaska episode. The same kind of parallel. These are the places where they're so remote. In one aspect, you can see things in the sky coming at you, coming towards you. There's this unsettling, terrifying aspect to encounters like that because you feel so helpless in this remote expanse. But it's also a place where if you are operating, like I made the suggestion with the collectors in Alaska, where that might be a place where you'd go to collect or do things.
It's a playground.
Because it is so remote.
Yeah.
It's going to take a while for people to get to you if you're being chased by F-16s or whatever's going on up there. But
let's kill them. That was the first thing she heard from
the
entities.
Yeah.
Suddenly I heard this chilling voice, let's kill them. It was telepathic. And I remember they were trying to basically pretend they were benevolent.
Yeah.
And she heard the telepathic communication, let's kill them.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a very eerie story. Definitely check it out, guys.
I think that was one of the most frightening, definitely the most frightening UFO alien encounters I think I've ever heard.
I think it was a tag team with that episode with the family in the roadside.
Oh, with a car that was picked up.
Oh, that was where they were
the car was pressed down upon.
It came and landed on them and they felt sick and it sucked all the oxygen out.
Yeah.
That was like a sky jelly encounter. It felt like some dark creature trying to eat them.
Another one that made me almost sick listening to it just because it felt so visceral. Do you remember what episode that was?
Yeah, it was the Australian Outback episode, I believe, the expansion episode.
Yeah.
6 point.
It is 6.11 EXP.
6.11, if you guys are not expansion members, or if you are and you haven't heard that episode, there are some freaky encounters in that one.
Yeah, that was a deep dive.
Terrifying.
Initiating episode flashback.
Expansion Episode 6:11, The Nullarbor Horror, Terror from Down Under.
Yes, there's a very strange, terrifying incident that occurred in 1988, January 20th of 1988, when this family was driving for the holiday around 4 a.m. in the morning towards Melbourne. They were driving along this stretch of land. It's called the Nullarbor Plain. It's a desolate stretch of road.
In the early hours of January 20th, 1988, the Knowles family found themselves driving across the vast and desolate Nullarbor Plain, heading towards Melbourne. The family, Faye and her 3 sons, Patrick, Sean, and Wayne, were wide awake as they navigated the lonely stretch of road. Little did they know, their journey was about to take a terrifying turn. It was around 4 a.m. when they first noticed it, a bright light ahead on the road. Initially, they thought it was a truck, but as they drew closer, it became clear that this was something else entirely. Sean, behind the wheel, couldn't shake the feeling that this was no ordinary light. He asked his brother Patrick, "Is that a spaceship?" Patrick dismissed the idea, but Sean's curiosity got the better of him, and he sped up to get a closer look. The family was soon confronted by an intensely bright white light, hovering about 20 meters away and traveling in front of their moving car. It seemed almost alive, blocking their view of the road ahead. Its slightly angular egg shape with the yellow center becoming more pronounced as they approached. Sean swerved to avoid the light, nearly colliding with another vehicle coming from the opposite direction. Panic set in as the light circled around their car, then began to chase the other vehicle. The Knowles family made several frantic U-turns, first trying to pursue the light, then desperately trying to escape it as it became clear that the light was after them. At one point, they lost sight of the light, only to feel a heavy weight land on top of their car with a clunking noise. The car seemed to be pushed down by an unseen force. The car groaned under the weight. Faye, desperate to understand what was happening, wound down her window and reached out. She felt something soft, spongy, and rubbery. Hot to the touch, but not burning. When she pulled her hand back inside, it was covered in a strange, black, gray dust. The confirmation of something tangible on their roof threw the family into a state of sheer terror. Patrick opened his window, only for a foul-smelling black powdery dust to flood the car, which smelled like dead bodies. A high-pitched whirring noise pierced their ears as their 2 dogs went into a frenzy. The family felt disoriented, their voices slowed down, and a creeping realization set in. They thought they were going to die. Patrick felt as though his brain was being sucked out, while Faye described it as something was entering their heads. Suddenly, the car was either dropped or forced down onto the road, bursting the rear right tire. Sean managed to bring the car to a halt and blacked out. In sheer terror, the family abandoned the vehicle and hid behind roadside bushes. The UFO lingered nearby for what felt like an eternity before it finally took off again, leaving them in a profound silence. After about 15 minutes, the family mustered the courage to return to their car. In their panic, while trying to change the blown tire, they tried to wave down a passing truck, heading to Mundrabilla, but their pleas for help went unanswered. They hurriedly changed the tire and sped away from the scene. Little did they know, at the service station down the road, their story was about to be corroborated by others. The very truckers who passed them on the road that night and who also saw something unexplainable in the sky, moving in the darkness above the Nullarbor plain.
Yeah, terrifying.
Back to the episode.
There are elements in the accounts from Stan in this book that remind me of the Mojave incident that we covered.
Yeah, he actually brings that up.
I don't know if you remember that one, but that was the one. And actually, which we'll be talking about in the expansion and show some video clips of these tendril things that come down that look a lot like what was described in the Mojave incident that came down in the distance as they were barbecuing outside of their RV.
At the Mojave?
And in the distance, they saw these things come down the desert, and then they saw red lights running towards the RV, and they're like these little goblin creatures. If you remember that account.
Yeah, I remember that one.
But there's a lot, and it's very close to this area. I guess that's a little further west, right? California.
Mojave. But yeah, the Satan's Butte is where that occurred. That was with Haas Lores. So we'll probably get more to that expansion. But first we have to get into, I think, his first real investigation with something from the sky. In 2009 or 10, he's assigned to this case. It's an elderly Navajo man that ends up sharing this UFO story with them. And they're pretty pleased about that because that kind of shows that they had earned their trust. Most Navajo, according to Stan, had a fear of either being shunned or the experience was so personal to them and affecting that they didn't want to go into it. So they were grateful for the trust of this elderly Navajo man. This took place near Ganado, Arizona, if I'm pronouncing that right. And yeah, this was assigned to their Special Projects Unit, the SPU. The sighting the good thing about it was reported promptly, which means they could get people on the ground in a timely fashion. The team arrived on the location within days. Now, this area where the old man lived, it had been ravaged by wildfire, apparently recently. And according to Stanley, interestingly, his home remained untouched. It was not affected by the wildfire. Is there a connection? So they arrive on scene to hear the account from this old man. The atmosphere at the home is very lively. Family members obviously really intrigued about the UFO experience. They sit down with this former railroad worker, which I guess a lot of Navajo men were former railroad workers at the time. And he noted that he shared the story with calm intelligence, very sincere, speaking simply, and with the help of a government translator. So very direct, not a lot of hype. Just here's the account and here's what happened.
Let's hear it.
This is called The Old Man and the UFO.
The old man was home alone one night because his wife and children had gone to visit one of his grandchildren, who was attending college in Phoenix. It was getting late, perhaps about midnight, when he decided to go to bed. As he was getting ready, he saw lights outside, thinking they were headlights and that someone was driving up to his home. He walked out to the poured concrete patio to see who it was. What he saw instead was a UFO. It was spherical and about 25 feet in diameter. It was bright like the sun, an intense yellow or orange with colored beams of light strobing and flashing. The craft flew slowly and deliberately around his home before moving a quarter of a mile away at the same pace and hovering above the tree line. Then the old man saw lights at the ground level below the craft. They were flashing and moved south from underneath the object, then back toward the craft, before gradually making their way toward his home. When they made it halfway to his home, one of his dogs, a little res mutt, ran out toward the lights and disappeared into the dark. A few moments later, when the dog reached the lights on the ground, it yelped in pain as if kicked. At that point, the old man became frightened and went inside his house and shut and locked the door. He watched from behind the curtains to see what would happen next. The little dog didn't reappear, apparently deciding it would be safer to run off and hide for the time being. The lights approached his home, and he realized the light was coming from objects held in the hands of 4 beings. The beings were each about 3 feet tall, childlike in their proportions, with gray skin. Their heads were oversized, about the diameter of a basketball, and they either had large black eyes or were wearing goggles. He couldn't tell if the beings were naked or simply wearing tight-fitting suits. The beings wandered around his yard and shone their lights on the ground as if looking for something they had lost. But the lights weren't like flashlights. Instead, they were more like laser beams, their light not diffusing as a flashlight's would, but remaining in a tight 1-inch column or tube. Each being held a different colored light: red, blue, green, and yellow. It was utterly silent outside. Neither the beings nor the ship made a single sound, even though their footsteps should have been audible on the carpet of burned twigs and leaves. The old man had another dog, a mother with pups, that was chained up near the house because she tended to be very aggressive and territorial. This dog did not make a single sound either and remained in the doghouse with her puppies as the beings approached the house. The old man's wood frame house had solar lights that ran across the front and around to the side, leading to an outhouse. Like most in this area, and on much of the Navajo reservation, the old man did not have running water or indoor plumbing. He watched as the aliens followed the lights around the side of the house. At this point, he gathered his courage and went outside to confront the beings. He followed them around the side of the house to the back, where he tripped and fell. Of course, for a man in his 80s, a fall is no small thing. It took him several minutes to recover and get back to his feet. By this time, the beings were already back at the craft, which flashed all of its lights again and moved 100 yards to the south along the tree line before shooting at an angle into the sky like a colorful bullet. At the end of his story, the old man shook his head and said that he had never experienced anything like this and didn't know why it happened. He had lived through several wars and seen many changes in the world. He had worked in the railroad industry for his entire life, which often kept him outside under an empty sky, but this was the first time he had ever encountered something so strange and otherworldly.
Fascinating. Yeah, I think that's an important note too, the fact that that's where he spent his life and being outside all the time.
Yeah.
You're going to see things, you're going to become accustomed to what's in the sky. And of course, what's on the ground, little gray beings.
Yeah.
If you live long enough, maybe you'll have an experience living in a place like that.
Be an interesting life, that's for sure, regardless of the aliens.
It'd be so weird too, especially if you're someone who is, salt of the earth kind of guy. Let's say you're like 80. Your whole life you've believed a certain way about the world and reality, and then you have an experience like that. At the end of your life,
Someone just comes and pinpricks your reality bubble.
yeah, pop. You're like, what?
World has changed.
You're like, okay, well, did it say anything about what his beliefs were before?
It seemed to alluded to the idea that
He's a straightforward kind of guy.
he lived through wars, all this other things, but
Yeah, right. Yeah, I remember that part, yeah.
I definitely in this area, he was Navajo. He might have heard the traditions of Star People. We've covered that a lot.
Right.
RD6 Killer's work. That's not super unfamiliar. Actually might be more likely than, a guy his age from a Western culture that might have been less likely to believe in that.
But is it going on now?
Yeah, I would imagine there might be a little bit, well, especially when you live out there, you've probably seen some weird things to begin with. Maybe not that, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I imagine your mind is a little more, well, who knows? I don't know. I haven't interviewed or know too many of those people that spend a lot of time
Yeah.
in areas like that. But I would imagine their minds are a little more open to the infinite universe.
Well, yeah, that's kind of interesting because it reminds me of some of what Stanley had said early on about in the book describing just patrolling out there
Mm-hmm.
in that vast space and expanse. And just because of the nature of it, you just feel more connected with the earth and with
Yeah, for sure.
creation. And I mean, just driving through like we have, you just get a sense that you're in another world. In reality, you're just more closely connected to the one you're on.
I feel the opposite of that living in Austin.
In the city.
It's just, it's the complete opposite feeling where you're just very centrally focused on this very human.
Yeah. Everything is man-made around you.
Yeah. It's hard to escape. It does feel like this is the only existence that exists.
Yeah.
Where when you're out in the country, especially in a place like that, that's very wide open, you can see the sky openly. It's just this vast expanse of the cosmos. I would imagine your mind wanders in ways that maybe not everyone does.
Yeah.
Like when I was out there, we were in specifically the Arches, thinking about the Arches National Park in Utah.
Yeah. That was otherworldly feeling.
And I just remember seeing this, I forget what it's called, but there's this area where it's just you go out to this vista where it feels like a temple.
Yeah.
With these massive cathedrals of stone around you, surrounded by like miles and miles as far as the eye can see of just earth and sky.
Incredible formations.
And it does just feel like you just get a sense of like, oh yeah, that's right, God is real. Oh, there is something beyond me.
There's something more for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just this haunting magic out there. But anyway.
Yeah. And actually in the expansion, we'll get into Stan's own personal experience, right? There is some fallout to this, you could argue, right, Jer, with his own encounter.
Yeah.
with something otherworldly in his home after this investigation.
Ooh, spicy.
Yeah.
To wrap up this account first, I was just going to mention Stan is trained in interrogation, body language detection.
Yeah.
Of course, noted that he didn't notice anything that was untruthful about how this man told his story, the old man. No signs of mental health issues or deceit. And the guy had even been offered apparently lucrative TV offers.
To tell the story?
Yeah, and he just had no interest in that. No interest in publicity, but he got the sense that he's 85 years old. He ends up dying about 5 years later, I think. But it seemed like he wanted to get on the record with the Navajo Rangers just to preserve the story for posterity. I mean, that's the most, I think, integral kind of reason to tell a story.
Yeah.
Like Jesse Marcel, famous case, Roswell. He was the guy holding the material that was like, this is just a weather balloon. He's in the photograph. He's near the end of his life and does an interview. He's like, I kept my silence for too long. What else can they do to me? I'm going to die in the next few years. No, they told me to hold this up. What was there was real, legit, otherworldly material. They swapped it out, and that's what I was holding.
They swapped it out for the photo.
That's why I'm making that face, basically, in that photo.
Right.
One thing I was certain of, being familiar with all air activities, that it was not a weather balloon, nor an aircraft, nor a missile. It was something else of which we didn't know what it was. So we proceeded to pick up the parts. A lot of it had a lot of little members with symbols. These little members could not be broken, could not be burned. I even tried to burn that, it would not burn. He says, I tried to bend the stuff. He says, it will not bend. We even tried making a dent in it with a 16-pound sledgehammer. Still no dent in it. The newsmen saw very little of that material, a very small portion of it. They wanted me to tell them about it, and I couldn't say anything. And when the general came in, he told me not to say anything, that he would handle it.
But those are important interviews when people get a chance to talk to people like that.
Yeah, they don't have a lot to lose.
Exactly. They want to die with a clean conscience.
There was a curious afterthought of that story too. Remember the dog in the story?
Yeah.
Apparently it died shortly after.
It was like a few weeks later, wasn't it?
A handful of days or maybe a week or so. But then really interestingly is I think a couple weeks after that, the puppies disappeared.
It had a litter of puppies and then those vanished.
Well, that's not super weird.
They were abducted, John.
I mean, I think it's weird that the dog died, but if the dog dies and it doesn't have a parent anymore, like who knows what's going to happen to the puppies?
Well, I guess it depends on where the puppies were kept. And if they were inside, obviously that would be more bizarre than if they were.
How do they even stay alive if they don't have a mother?
Well, they didn't die. They just vanished.
I guess my point is if it's a family dog
Yeah.
and then there are puppies, usually family members would be aware of where the puppies are.
Point of clarification, the puppies belonged to the old man's sister. A week after the old man's UFO encounter, his sister had a litter of puppies disappear from her property. There were no signs of animal predators or human thieves. Curious, indeed.
Although I will say on the reservation, there's a big dog problem.
Yeah.
I think they have like 250,000 dogs or something like that. And like 5 animal control officers.
Yeah.
There's a big problem. Actually, Stanley's own, someone in his family, I think in 2021, she was killed by a pack of dogs while jogging on a trail.
Oh, man.
A pack of dogs?
It was really tragic.
Holy crap, dude. That's so reverse modern society where the dogs actually become wolves again.
Yeah. If you have enough open area that's not managed, there's not enough personnel.
They are wolves, and if they're starving, they're going to eat whatever they can find.
And they'll work together to hunt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is creepy.
It is a problem out there, apparently.
That reminds me of when I was in Guatemala, I remember seeing like dogs on the street being treated really poorly. I remember thinking like, that's so mean.
Yeah, I remember that too. I know.
But thinking about it now, it's like, well, they're wild. They're probably more than a nuisance, maybe very dangerous in a lot of situations.
I saw dogs being treated bad that were in people's yards that they were like the scrap cleanup dog.
Yeah.
They would feed them garbage and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I saw some horrible things there when it came to dogs. I won't go into it, but yeah, it's not fun.
Living in the dump and
they treat them more like
rodents.
Rodents, yeah.
Yeah, so of course there are people that have actual pet dogs, but in this case, in the reservation, I forget her name, Lissa, who had been killed by the dogs. She, I guess it was a handful of the dogs that belonged to a neighbor. I think it was, quote, some of the 20 meanest dogs that the neighbor had.
Some of the 20?
So there's a limit on how many dogs you can have, but as far as who follows those laws, it's another thing. So
Yeah.
people can just have a ton of dogs and then they do what they will and they kind of operate as packs. And then out in the actual, reservation, more remote areas, you have roaming.
It's wild.
Yeah.
So be careful out there, guys.
If you're roaming in the Navajo reservation.
Yeah.
Even just jogging, there were track runners that were attacked a couple years before that. Same problem. So yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, more than just the paranormal out there to be aware of.
Yeah, probably more dangerous than, well, depending on if it's a malevolent abduction.
I think it's a frequency issue too. I think you're more likely to have a problem with something like that than abductions. I think are real and occurring out there, but it's probably less common than maybe in a wild animal attack.
Yeah, I would be probably more afraid of getting attacked by roving dogs than getting abducted.
Yeah.
Skinwalkers, I'm kind of afraid of.
Oh yeah.
I think the level of terror is different too. Like,
yeah.
I'm more.
It's like an existential fear, I feel like, with a skinwalker.
Yeah, like, is it taking my soul?
Yeah.
Like if I'm in Colorado hiking or something, I'd be very afraid of a grizzly bear. Like just the idea of that.
Real life monster.
Yeah.
But I would be more terrified if. That was weird. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Is that my basement room here?
I think somebody dropped something.
No, I think something.
Sounded like coming from your room, Jared.
Jeremy, there's a skinwalker in your basement.
I know where it is too.
Oh, yeah.
Right into that.
Oh,
never mind.
Bye-bye.
Should have moved your camera. Fail.
I forgot my camera isn't great. There's this creepy closet that I can't open the door to because it's like it can only go this far and the stone floor blocks it from opening any further. John, this was yours before.
Oh, yeah. I remember very well.
Yeah, so it just sits open.
The storm cellar? Like
No.
or the meat cellar or whatever? The veggie cellar?
Right.
What do you call it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a creepy door.
Yeah.
It's almost like pitch black and I always see it out of the corner of my eye while I'm recording down here.
It's not closed?
No.
Why don't you close that?
I like open doors. I almost feel like
We've had this conversation. There was a closets and creepy areas open guy.
That is absurd to leave that open.
monsters can't live in rooms where doors don't close.
No, they just come around the corner.
They just come right out and they don't even have to do anything. Like that door is,
Yeah, then it's more open.
like you have to rip it open because of the concrete ground.
You're inviting them out, Jeremy.
it's open like this right now.
This is why you're having nightmares.
Yeah, I would close that, you crazy bastard.
I don't like because then if I hear noise, I feel like something's in there. I got to go look. Now I can just look and see that it's just pitch black and terrifying.
And open. Like they'd have to rip the door open and then you could run. But now it's open and your soul's exposed.
Yeah, watch something just slink into the room while I'm talking to you guys. Slinking is the worst way.
Well, there's definitely something in that house. I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you. Well, something did just move down here. I heard it. And there's nothing in here that would cause that, so.
Anyway, speaking of doorways, in this area, what is the significance about this place? Is it a doorway? Is there something going on, a connection to another realm or multiple other realms? You know, we've discussed this region a lot on our show, covered plenty of fascinating encounters speckled throughout this enchanted area, abductions, phantom hitchhikers, missing persons cases. Is this a window area? If so, why? And Stan comes to the conclusion, based on his investigations, personal experiences, he believes that the Navajo Nation, and likely probably the world as a whole, is a home to multiple dimensions that intersect our own. I think we all kind of believe that at this point.
Yeah.
With all the episodes we've done.
I would say so.
Our world is not the only one. Many dimensions in the universe, and Stan believes that some beings and entities are able to cross between them. How? We're not sure. But it did remind him of the Navajo beliefs he was taught growing up, especially the creation story that involves a character named Iotsa, which is somewhat similar to Sasquatch. Tall, hairy, maybe dangerous giant. Anyways, he has other theories in the book. If you guys are interested, as Jim was saying, yes, fantastic book, really well written, compelling personal experiences.
Definitely.
And at the end, he says that his kind of main takeaway is that the paranormal, it's not a matter of belief. It's a reality. And it just took him his own personal experiences through years of investigation, experiences in this area, to come to know that that is the truth. And one of maybe the main turning point for him was haunting at Window Rock, which we will be covering in the expansion. So you're going to want to check that out. A really compelling, fascinating poltergeist investigation in an office building in Window Rock.
I love office hauntings.
Yes, really interesting. And there's an event in there that kind of changes his mind completely on what all this means.
Because it's on like hallowed ground.
Yeah, that's one of the things he talks about. And one of his theories talks about sacredness, and also because, we talk about all the time psychic scars. There's so much turmoil through generations on this land.
Yeah.
Being kicked out, having to come back on this long walk.
The long walk.
Where hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people died being forced to walk. But terrible. So yeah, you have those psychic scars and yes, sacred land. And I think there's probably a reason to believe that this land was sacred because they could feel the specialness and these maybe opening gateways in this area for whatever reason causes these thin spots in our world, but which I think we all believe are real and do exist. And he leaves us with this one quote. He says, "The universe is much bigger and stranger and more wonderful than we can even begin to imagine, but the least we can do is try."
I like that.
So join us in the expansion while we try a little harder.
Yeah. We'll probably talk about Stanley's encounter, speaking of being invaded upon by something otherworldly in the expansion, and then kind of parallel it with other accounts on the reservation related to this phenomena. But I will say, guys, definitely go get this book, Paranormal Ranger by Stanley Milford Jr.
Join us in the expansion.
And join us in the expansion for more exploration into the strange.
You won't regret it.
All right, guys. And with that, I think we have some very special people to thank. Members that have signed up at the higher tiers for a shout out because they are just that generous.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you to Sean DeWeese.
Awesome.
Do what?
DeWeese.
Deweese.
DeWeese, a shadow person of interest. Heck yeah,
All
start
right.
off strong. Justin Devenberg is a Dogman Whisperer. Yeah.
Oh my
Just in time.
Hurt my throat.
You're so rusty.
Hi, guys.
Kaylee Elton. Hi. Hi,
right.
Kaylee.
Elton, my John.
Elton, my John.
That's what you say.
That's what you say.
Sounds
Thank
like
you, Kaylee. You're a friend of us.
you are. Elizabeth Lou. Lou? No. Elizabeth Lowe. Hi.
All right.
Happy to have you. Welcome to be here.
Elizabeth, hi. Hi, Elizabeth.
I'm always high. When I'm
welcome
with
to be here.
Hello.
Thanks to be having you, Dylan Hopkins.
Hello.
Hello, my friend.
Is Anthony your uncle?
Yes. It says that in his bio.
Gosh.
Welcome in. Welcome to the
in,
expansion.
Anthony.
It's been a while.
Oh, I said welcome in, Anthony.
Welcome. Anthony's here as well. Shaking the dust off, that's for sure. It's been a while. Justin Lay, what's up? What's up, Justin?
Yes.
Aloha.
Awesome.
I ate some kidneys with fava beans.
He's going back to the Hopkins.
I ate his kidney with a fava bean.
It's
that what it
nice
is?
Chianti.
Nice
All right,
Chianti.
sorry, go.
Sylvana Fernandez.
Sylvana.
What's up?
Into the woods with you.
That's a cool name.
Sylvan Dread.
Pretty.
It's a pretty name.
Very pretty.
Welcome to be here.
Ooh. Get the Dogman sound ready just because her name is Amber Lichen.
Ooh. Like a lycanthrope.
Like a lycanthrope.
Or an algae on the side of boots. Is that a lichen? Welcome in.
Yeah. Yes. No, it's a barnacle.
Welcome to be here.
Superhuman M is here.
Amna?
Superhuman M.
Oh, Superhuman M.
Yeah.
Is that one of the letter people?
Yeah.
Yes. Sure.
Awesome.
That was my favorite letter person.
Welcome in, Superhuman M.
Yes. Welcome in.
Jimmy Kirshner is here.
Jimmy Kirshner?
And a Dogman Whisperer to boot.
That feels good to say.
Jimmy Kirshner.
Jimmy Kirshner. That is
I like how it
it's like a
feels.
marshmallow in my mouth.
Jimmy, we hope you enjoy the extra shows.
Me too.
Thank you for joining the expansion.
Yes.
It's a Dogman Whisperer. Ryan of the Czech frickin' Republic, guys.
Excellent.
All right.
Yes.
Hey to you, my friend. Whatever time zone you're hanging out in.
Listen to the next episode because we've got a Czech story. Pretty great.
Check it out.
Oh, you beat me to it.
Yeah. Welcome to the States.
Lara Michelle Morris. That is an interesting name. Lara.
I like it. Lara. Sounds like
Lara
a Grecian
Michelle
goddess.
Welcome in.
Welcome in.
Niece of Zach Morris. Chris Green is a Dogman Whisperer.
My favorite color and name. Welcome.
Christopher Green.
Together in one. Leaving her palace, Lori Buckingham is visiting us peasants in the hole.
Behold. What's her name, Leah?
Lori.
Lori. Welcome in, Lori. We love you.
Lori and Chris are Dogman Whisperers. We want to thank you. Mallory Mother Heckenfelmet.
What?
No, that can't be real.
Please tell me that's real.
Mallory Mother Heckenfelmet.
Excellent.
That is
Yes.
an amazing name.
Mallory Mother.
Heckenfelmet.
Heckenfelmet?
Is that Austrian?
Two of those are words I've never seen before, but somehow it was so
That is
easy
a
to
beautiful
say.
name.
I know. I can't believe you said it right.
Heckenfelmet. That is incredible. Oh, thank you so much, Mallory.
Eastern European maybe.
You made our day.
Sounds like it reads.
Yes, it does. It is.
Reads like it sounds.
Yes, welcome to be here. Christian DeRosit. Hello's it.
Welcome, Kristen.
Welcome.
Yes. DeRose it. It grows in the garden of belief hole.
Yes, you knows it. Callum Mercer is here. Hi, welcome to be here, Callum.
Welcome in, Callum.
Hello.
Pleasure to see you here.
Hello.
Pleasure to be with you.
Dogman Whisperer barking in the hole. He's howling it up. Scott Perone.
Pierogi?
Or Peroni. Perone?
Peroni.
Perone. Scott, welcome to have you.
Scott, you're too hot.
Ouch.
Welcome in.
Welcome in, you Dogman Whisperer.
Peroni my bony.
No.
Peroni John's Pony.
All of your rhymes sound wrong. Yes. Inappropriate. Just always comes out that way.
Peroni my bony.
Nohemi Tarango.
Whoa.
Hemi.
Tarango my bongo.
Nohemi Tarango?
Nohemi Tarango sounds like
That is an awesome name.
Just floats off the tongue.
Tarango.
sounds like a sonic aberration. There's something wrong with your radio. It has a Nohemi Tarango. I don't know why.
Love that name.
That is an awesome name.
Great names today.
Thank you, Nohemi.
Coming up with a classic, we got Jake C,
Jake C.
a Dogman Whisperer.
Jake C., you see me, and I love you for that.
In memory of my Jakey.
That's right.
He was a dog man, too.
He was. Rest in peace, my friends. Aubrey Kelton, another Dogman Whisperer.
Oh, that's a pretty name, too. All these pretty names today.
And riding on her back is another Dogman Whisperer, Greta. They're riding together.
Wow, I feel like we're living in a fairyland today. All these wonderful story names.
Yeah. That's exactly how you pronounce it. That's the correct accent, John.
Welcome in, our new friends.
Okay, Nora. That's another pretty name.
Awesome.
Nora, welcome to be here.
Oh, yeah, wow.
You sweetheart.
I feel like we should have children now so we can name them after these expansion members. Welcome in.
You want children with Nora? That's a little forward, Chris.
No, name my child. Anyway.
Okay. Hallie B is another Dogman Whisperer.
Halle Berry finally made it in the hole.
Oh, it is.
We knew she was coming at some
There's
point.
a profile picture, and it is.
What? Really?
No, I'm kidding. It could be. Who knows?
I knew it wouldn't be her anyways.
You never know.
She loves the paranormal.
She might. You know. Don't judge her.
Finally going to make that Belief Hole film.
Monsters Ball, she said she was going to do that
She
someday.
in Monsters Ball?
I think so.
Was that? I thought that was like a drama.
Yeah, it was.
Okay, not a paranormal. Just has the word monster in it.
No.
Chris, you child. You absolute child. Thank you, Hallie B. Who's a different Hallie B?
She was a sexy minute, though.
Oh, that's right. Now I remember it.
Ashley Branham is another Dogman Whisperer.
Fantastic.
Ashley Branham?
Ashley Branham.
Oh, I like that.
Yes.
You like everything.
I did like all these names today. I feel like everyone deserves a castle. A Belief Hole castle. Welcome.
Ashley Branham, welcome to the hall.
Oh, and last but not least, guys, let's hit it off with a super generous fella, just like we started off with our previous generous fella, Sean. This person, my friends, is a shadow person of interest, and his name is Will Powers.
What?
That's right.
Powerful stuff.
I've got flowers to give Will Powers.
I want a power. Any power.
Thank you, Will. That is your power is generosity, and we appreciate that, and we appreciate you.
Yes. All of you wonderful people, you make the show possible. You really do.
Yes.
Tell all your friends. Tell them all to come into the hole with us.
Yes. Thank you all so much. And if you haven't heard your name yet, stick around because we are getting through the list finally.
It's an ongoing situation.
It's happening. It's really happening, and you will hear it. So thanks for being here. You guys are awesome.
Yes. Hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, and we hope to see you in the expansion for more tales on the reservation.
Yes. Even stranger, even creepier.
Yeah, hope you like this one. It was definitely, I tried to listen to it last night in bed and I couldn't because it was creeping me out.
The creep factor.
Yeah, definitely some freaky stuff, man. And the expansion, I think, is
Yeah.
extremely unsettling.
So you might need to sleep with the lights on tonight.
Yeah. Keep them on. All right, guys. We'll see you in your closets as you sleep.
Better check them.
Safe travels.
Bye.